Good afternoon, everyone. Today, for the next hour, Brad Harris and I from Full Spectrum Survival are going to discuss how to thrive in the grand solar minimum, how you can prepare right now for the changes to come, the signs around you that you're seeing, how can you get ready, how can you inform those around you, how can you get community involved. This is what we're going to discuss for the next hour. I hope it's really helpful for you. And also I encourage you to jump over to Brad's channel, Full Spectrum Survival. It's a plethora of information for you, for your personal knowledge, how to get ready for this, and how to just roll with these changes, and when others around you aren't prepared, how you can become the leader in that community because you have the skills. That's why I say jump over to Full Spectrum Survival. You're going to learn a lot from that channel. There's so much valuable knowledge there that we can be using over these next few years as things around us in our lives begin to change with rising food prices and the effects that go with that.
As well as, I'm going to bring up one last point. All the planets in our solar system are changing. If you do the research, every single one of our planets is experiencing weather change phenomenon, electrical changes, and global warming and climate change on every single planet. Start with Neptune, look at Jupiter, look at Mars. They're all experiencing weather changes and actual climate changes on their systems. There is no CO2 up there. There's no humans driving that.
Right.
It's an electrical force from our sun going out in our solar system. And our solar system is passing through, an energetic cloud as well. So there's cosmic forces that are driving the systems terrestrially here. There's no way to mitigate that. Sorry, no tax will take care of that. And it is an outside force. You're right.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you brought up meteors. What is your thoughts on the valid concern that we could see large meteor events here on Earth?
The amount of dust that's been up in the atmosphere just over the last 3 or 4 years, again, when we come back to the solar wind pressure on our Earth's terrestrial atmosphere and our magnetosphere, as that weakens, that's a generally hardened thing that bounces them off, or at least it burns them up faster. We're going to see a lot more meteors penetrating the atmosphere much further down than could have been with a strong magnetosphere across our planet here. You've seen the number of meteors has increased exponentially across the news. Yeah. Normally those would either be bounced off or they would burn up so far above that you wouldn't be able to see them, but they're getting really low, even making ground now. An enormous amount are hitting the ground with airburst explosions with vibration and shock wave. Now, the Teleblinsk was the first one in Russia, but since that time, there's been dozens of other ones from South America to Asia, Japan, but they're not widely reported in the news. It's a regional reporting of this. Teleblinsk was just so vast, so gargantuan, so huge that it made world news attention. But the ones that occur at night that are captured by a camera and then, the shock wave, that's not so grandiose for news coverage because everybody had a camera in their car and they saw the huge streak coming across. But there has been a lot of airburst explosions over the last year and a half. And these will also increase the amount of meteors and the dust that's in the atmosphere. Noctilucent clouds are early this year by 3 weeks. They were early last year by 2 weeks. So wait a second. Last year, they were early by 2 weeks. This year, they're early by 3 weeks. And they're intensifying from all the meteoric dust in the atmosphere. What's going to happen next year?
That's right. What will we see then? Now, David, what's your thoughts?
I always try to go out, what is next year? I don't have the answer. I can forecast out, but if somebody has more information than me, please feed me. I'm willing to listen to new ideas, new concepts, new theories. As always, I'm willing to learn and change with the information that I'm fed.
That's right. Now, what are your thoughts on the fact that we could experience here on Earth? We're so reliant on our electronics, and not just on an individual level. Sure, all the teenagers of the world would go crazy if they didn't have their iPhone, but the governments of the world are so reliant on electronics for our nuclear power plants, for our everyday life. What are your thoughts on our ability to withstand and endure a large EMP? And is a large EMP possible at our solar minimum?
It is. They find a lot of these giant events of coming off the sun. I wouldn't say CMEs, but it could be filament releases or CMEs, both. They find some of the highest levels coming off during these grand solar minimums. And it's kind of in an inverse way to think. It doesn't really make sense. If the sun's going to be into a decreased state of activity, how could there be such a large solar flare coming off?
Right.
It's like a capacitor discharge that lasts, and it sends out a lot of particles. I don't know why we're not hardening the grid in the United States against the EMP. It would only cost a few $1 billion. We spend more on the wars over there running around the Middle East than we are hardening our own electrical grid against such an EMP pulse. Carrington invents a perfect example.
Right.
They had one in the 1600s during the modern minimum too, but there was no cabling back then.
Yeah, right.
But it still caught houses on fire, caught forests on fire. They had such an energetic event on the planet that, there were vast fires. Chicago fire was also attributed to this solar outburst as well. So we can see it again, but we would have they need to harden everything up. Your computers will be fried. There'll be no more communication if one of these things hits that side of the planet. We will be back into the Stone Age unless you have a Faraday cage ready. Now that might be an interesting thing as a prepping point. Who has a Faraday cage out there? And have you tested it?
That's right. Yeah, that's something that we advocate people looking into. Or, we have some electronics, some shortwave radios in a Faraday cage ourselves, but at a large scale, you're going to be caught unaware. Your car isn't sitting in a Faraday cage garage.
Nope.
So you're going to be caught unaware if a large event like that takes place. But David, with Adapt 2030, one of the biggest parts of your outreach that I respect is that you, like here at Full Spectrum, we don't push fear. Doom, it is not all is lost. There is time to prepare, and that is something that you have always advocated, and that's massive amounts of information without the world's going to end narrative, and letting people know that they have control here and that they can prepare. Why do you think that is so important, to not push all is lost fear while still understanding that as humans we need to prepare for ourselves?
Well, that would be fake news. Why are we still here? People have always survived during these times. And if you just read history and you can see how they survived and what problems they had back then, we could probably extrapolate out and say, well, we're going to experience the same set of circumstances and problems and difficulties right now. Well, let's look back. Okay, they had a difficulty growing food. Great. Well, let's look how we're going to grow food now. And okay, the current system of how it's grown, produced, shipped, and delivered. Well, let's just think about if that breaks down, what can we do ourselves? Okay, we're going to need to change something. It's like that. If you have a leak in your ceiling and it's raining, you're not going to sit there and go, well, I'm just going to let my house fill up and I'm going to drown. No, you're going to figure out a way to plug that thing up and deal with it. People have always survived through these times. If it really had that much of an effect on a complete population wipeout, we wouldn't have this conversation. Modern minimum, only 25% of the world's population died. That's it. 75% of the people lived. But they had to adapt the way they live. Absolutely they did.
Yeah, right.
And the Dalton minimum, this is in the 1800s. Now, when we come through history, 1800s, we're thinking we're getting pretty modern by the 1820s. We got steam engines and we're moving along and everything. They still lost 10% of the global population at that point. 90% of the people lived, but they adapted their strategy on how to survive. Now, one thing about the bug out as well, if you're going to need to leave the area you're in, are you going to want to walk out there by yourself into a hostile world, or are you going to want to cooperate with people and go as a group? Because you're going to need to be staying up all night. You're going to have people on watch while you're going around. I would rather have a group of 20 people that I really, really trust with my life, moving at the same time than I would, and then we could grow, we could forage, we can find, we can have different chores, different tasks, so we all can survive. Hey, you start the fire. Hey, you go get water. You need to go out and look for some food. Oh, there's a supermarket. Great, there's a few cans left. Let's go rummage through something.
That's right.
Whatever it is, it's not going to get down to that kind of Mel Gibson kind of apocalyptic, level. But if it does, and there is a serious economic collapse, like I forecast there will be, people are going to be moving around for a little bit. You're going to need to move around in a group, and I cannot tell you enough how much I really believe the connection of the human spirit's going to come back together. Like, this news has divided us for 50, 60 years.
Right.
That's the narrative. Divide you, conquer you, I can control you. Now I think when the news disappears and all that stuff, we're going to come back together. Really, I do believe. They turned us into ice cubes. Like a piece of water, you can freeze into an individual ice cube in a tray. And I think that's what they've done over all these years. They've turned us into little dissected ice cubes. But once that water melts, it all comes back together. And I really believe we're going to come back together. And I don't care where you came from, what your background was, what you studied, what your religion is, what your political belief is. As long as we can survive together, hey, that's all that's going to count.
Well, that's great. That's actually a great point. We had a member of our community here ask for a moment of contemplation and even prayer for a member that's in need. So in this sort of brief moment of silence, I think that we should reflect not just on what we can do for ourselves as the world changes, but what we can do for others. Because after all, this community is not a selfish community. It's one that revolves around our ability to help each other. And David, like you said, there will be a spiritual awakening of people's knowledge and understanding that we are all in this together. And if we're going to survive, we're going to need to survive together. So David, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much for what you have brought to our table today. And for everyone watching, please go to David's YouTube channel at Adept 2030. You can visit his website at oilseedcrops.org. If you have a question, if there's something that we went over today that you didn't understand, I am positive that he is willing to answer it for you and to bring you up to speed. And so David, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I will take those questions and run with them. And if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you right away I don't know the answer, because I don't know the answers to a lot of things. I don't know everything. I will definitely look into it and get back to you with the best answer of my ability to give you that. And also one last positive thing here. You know, I talk about organizing into groups in your own local neighborhood. There's going to be others doing the same thing. So you're not going to be alone as the only group trying to get it together as an area out there. There's going to be other groups doing the same thing. So if everybody organizes into community groups helping each other, the next community right next to you is going to be doing the same thing. Right. And then the next community down there is going to be doing the same thing. So there's going to be a help network outside your own network, as well as other communities that are organizing together. So don't feel you're ever going to be an island of, 20 or 50 people, and you'll never have any help, and you'll have to survive by yourself. And there's other groups of people that are going to be uniting and coming together as well. And these are other people to outreach. And then imagine 3 or 4 communities helping each other. There's going to be access at that point. Your cost of living is going to go way down. You won't have any cost of life. You produce almost everything yourself.
What a great mission.
Food, water, everything.
What a great mission statement that we understand and we are not alone. I don't think you could have said it any better. Thank you so much, David, for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, too. I appreciate tonight. It was a great talk.
And thank you all the mods. Thank you everybody who watched. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below or email me at fullspectrumsurvival@gmail.com. Email David over at Adept 2030. Thank you guys, and we wish you a good night. And as always, stay safe and keep watch.